Hello there.
General Kenobi. You will fall. Age of the Jedi is over.
Now this is hardly fair.
Hello gamers. Now if you couldn't tell by some of the other videos that I have released on this channel, I am a massive Star Wars fan. And shockingly to some maybe, Revenge of the Sith is probably my favourite Star Wars movie. Now I'm going to quickly cover my bases here. I know it's not the best Star Wars movie. I was a prequels child. I know that objectively The Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars film. Also maybe one of the best films. But anyways, that's not important, as today I am checking out the Star Wars Revenge of the Sith video game. Now, I didn't know too much about this game going into it, so my plan was I played through the whole game. I did some of the bonus missions they have and played some of the dueling mode that they have. And then I went to do some research on the topic. Now, whilst playing this game, I took a bunch of notes about how the game chose to not involve some of the biggest meme moments in the film, like the stuff along the lines of, "Do it, unlimited power, my new empire," and, of course, "It's over Anakin, I have the high ground."
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground! You underestimate the power of the dark side. Don't try it! It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground! You underestimate my power! Don't try it!
Now, I was racking my brain on why they would not include these scenes, or sometimes even choose to cut around them to purposely not involve that scene.
You have allowed this Dark Lord to twist your mind until now. Until now you have become the very thing you swore to destroy.
Don't lecture me, Obi-Wan. I see through the lies of the Jedi. I do not fear the dark side as you do.
Don't make me kill you.
I will do what I must.
You will try, my old friend.
But it would seem they had a pretty good reason. They didn't know that these scenes would be popular, as this game was released a good 1 to 2 weeks before the movie itself, which almost no movie tie-in game does that, especially due to the fact that the game straight up had scenes from the movie in glorious 240p. But if you were going to play the game before the film came out, you would know how the movie was going to end. They just sort of changed some of the broad strokes and, as mentioned before, removed some of the lines from it. But then at the same time, if you'd seen the original trilogy, you know what was going to happen in Revenge of the Sith. Maybe not how they were going to get there, but you definitely knew how it was going to end. Of course, one major downside of this game is unfortunately the voice acting. I don't know why particularly, as I'm not very smart in these sort of things and haven't researched it too much, but I feel it could be because the game uses a mix of the movie cast and their own voice actors.
I do not fear the dark side as you do.
Don't make me kill you.
It also could just be a lot of the performances ended up being phoned in, especially the ones by the original cast, which is very unlucky, but happens a lot in these video game tie-in, as it was really just seen as a little bit extra promotional and a little bit extra money for the movie. And the gaming industry definitely wasn't what it was back then than what it was now, if that makes any sense. I'm not too sure. However, this game doesn't seem like that apart from the voice acting, as this just so happens to be one of the better Star Wars games I've ever played. Now, by no means is it the best, but the game is very much a fun time. The combat is very good, especially in the later game, as in the early game you sort of have to wait a fair amount of time to let your force power regenerate. But in the later stages of the game it gets so much better, and the lightsaber combat pretty goddamn good. It's not the best, it's definitely no Fallen Order or Jedi Survivor, but there are some pretty good combos you get. And Skywalker and Kenobi have very different styles, and they feel very unique. But yet they also feel right to the characters. Also, if I didn't mention, you get to play as both Anakin and Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan's combat style is more refined and smooth and just sort of looks like he's a master of his craft. Where Anakin's combat can be very heavy and rage-filled, less sort of brains behind the swing of the saber. There are some other characters you can play in the bonus missions like Yoda, but they don't feel as good. For example, Yoda only really has one basic combo and it's just not very good. The level design in this game is also, believe it or not, pretty good. Excluding the fact that the game is made in like 2004, 2005, so the graphics definitely don't hold up. But for example, there is this one segment where you are fighting droids on General Grievous's ship whilst you're trying to free the Chancellor. And then the ship rolls over and you end up fighting on the glass window of the bridge. And you get to see this epic battle going on around you in space with Republic cruisers firing upon Separatist frigates and of course vice versa. And I just know if this game got a remaster or was made today, that this would just look so amazing with today's graphics. Also, something else that depends on who you are, but I don't know if it hurts or helps the level design, but that is the camera is fixed and you can't really move it around like you can in most other games. It moves with you around the level. Now, I can see how this would help the developers as they can focus on certain areas and make those areas really good. As for the most part, they know where the camera is going to be looking, what's it going to see, how's it going to interact with the environment. However, with this comes its own problems, as enemies will often be invisible to you by standing directly behind you or in front of you, depending on where the camera is. On the topic of enemies, a good game always has good enemies, as if you're fighting nothing, it could get boring. There are 3 classes of enemies you will find within combat. That being the droids, the Trade Federation's foot soldiers / bodyguards, and of course the clones after the activation of Order 66. And each of these factions has different types of troops. You've got your run-of-the-mill grunts, you've got snipers, you've got jetpack soldiers, you've got tanks, you've got beefier units, which are also just tanks, and a bit more. Of course, most of the factions do reuse each other's troops, just with a different skin on it. But they do feel different enough that it's still a unique experience encountering all of them. You even get to fight the Jedis as Lord Vader storming the Jedi Temple, which also reminds me that the power level for each faction just sort of seems right and correct, as droids can be pretty easy to cut down, usually being only 1 or 2 swings of your saber, where when you eventually get to fighting the Jedi, it can be an incredibly powerful enemy and hard to kill. There are also boss fights throughout the game. You've got your likes of Grievous, Anakin as Obi-Wan on the last mission. And these boss fights, to be honest, very well done. There's also a Count Dooku one, of course. And they're pretty good boss fights. Some of them have a lot of stages and very much drag on towards the end. Like, I think the Anakin boss fight has like 5 or 6 stages. However, that, at least for me, was the easiest boss fight, compared to your likes of Mace Windu, who you fight as Anakin after he attacks the Chancellor. That fight was incredibly difficult for me. Like, I struggled. I think I died like 5 times, but I guess that makes sense as Mace Windu was a very powerful Jedi. Also, on the topic of deaths, checkpoints in this game hurt me like a lot, as in, like many old games, it just doesn't have any. I think only the last 3 missions introduced checkpoints. The rest is just if you die at the very last part of the mission, nah, you need to redo the whole thing. It doesn't matter. You gotta do it again. Which I don't know if this game did it, and I'm not gonna say it did, but I think some older games did it like that, so that it extends the playtime of the game. As this is a relatively short game, took me about 5 hours to complete in its entirety, including the bonus missions, and playing around a little bit in the dueling mode. Now, the dueling mode is basically a couch co-op multiplayer, as that's what all games were back then, where you can pick a litany of characters to fight as, even including Darth Vader in the suit, and the old Obi-Wan Kenobi, which I didn't think a game like this existed, excluding fan-made game of Force Combat, which is also a very fun game. If you enjoy the dueling sort of Street Fighter-esque games, and you're a Star Wars fan, I definitely suggest checking out Force Combat. It was fun to play this game. Now, I didn't have any friends, so it was difficult to play. But I imagine if you had friends, this could be a real fun thing to do, even today. Maybe make a little bit of a drinking game out of it. Whoever loses have to buy a round of beers or do a shot or whatever. Assuming that you are, of course, of age and responsible while drinking your alcohol. So this has been my kind of quick look at the third Star Wars game. Sorry, the third Star Wars movies video game. And it was a pretty enjoyable experience. And it makes me want to play more Star Wars games than I already, of course, play. On that note, I am working on making a video on Jedi Survivor. However, when I was installing the game to play it, that's when all the drama came out about the buggy release and all that. So I decided to hold off on playing it, and I still haven't gotten around to it yet, even though I spent like $500 on the collector's edition. But I will make a video on that game when I get around to playing it, to go along with my Jedi Fallen Order video, and maybe I will find more Star Wars games I want to play, and then I'll make videos on those games. If, of course, I find it worth my time making a video on it, which I don't do much with my time, it'd probably be worth it. But until then, enjoy your day, and may the Force be with you. Oh, also, this game was released on May the 4th, which I think is pretty cool if you ask me.
It's over!